Welcome to the Powered by Age-Friendly City Zoomcast reality-style podcast.
We are movers and shakers, shaking up the old notion of silent, helpless, invisible seniors.
This is a new series of podcasts funded by the City of Vancouver and the 411 Senior Center Society.
As PBA AFC ambassadors, we
raise awareness,
share our original stories and poems,
inform, advocate, and involve seniors in discussing important social issues.
In short, these podcasts will help us,
you, in creating an age-friendly city for Vancouver today,
tomorrow the world.
You can hear us everywhere podcasts are heard. Hello, this is Charlotte Farrell, coordinator for the Powered by Age-Friendly City podcast program. Today, I'm hosting and facilitating what's going to be a lively discussion on debunking myths about aging. A study done by Professor of Public Health and Psychology, Becca Levy, Dr. Becca, found that when you believe in myths about aging, like uselessness, helplessness, it can in fact have a negative impact on your longevity. But when you replace those negative stereotypes with positive perceptions like wisdom, self-realization, it can result in a nearly 8-year increase. So today we're giving away years as we discuss this topic. We are having an interesting topic because I learned that debunking myths can actually put 8 more years on your life, according to some research that was done by a public health unit. But we're going to be talking about myths about aging and debunking those myths. But we'll start with our introductions that we usually do. I'm Charlotte Farrell. I'm a poet, writer, and host of this particular program. And we'll start with each person saying their 15 seconds of fame intro. Let's start with Neil.
Yeah, good day. My name's Neil Ryan. I'm a writer, a poet, a publisher of my book. It went to the printer Tuesday. And yes. This is the latest version and the last iteration of this book from the other side. And so from theotherside.ca.
Yes.
Which I am reading right now.
Yes.
Oh, really? Good.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been sharing some poems with the 7 a.m. group that I mentioned. Leslie.
Yes, I'm Leslie Hebert from New Westminster. I am a teacher of English as a second language and a writer, and currently working on a travel memoir of a trip I took to Japan a few years ago.
Wow. Speaking of places to go, we're planning our trip. Chris?
I'm Chris Morrissey, and I'm a feminist, lesbian feminist, and I participate at Britannia Senior Center, and I'm also with Quirky, the Queer Imaging and Writing Collective for Elders, and I'm working on a memoir as well. Not a travel one.
Judith?
Hi, I'm Judith Rainey, and I'm a member of 411 Senior Society and South Granville Senior Society and the podcast group. And I am here to support all of our members and encourage us to carry on.
Okay. Joel?
I'm Joel Flynn from the Podstream podcasting studio at the second floor of 323 Terminal Ave. Writing a PhD, apparently. That's a lot of fun, and going back into that type of writing. Yeah, love to sing karaoke, but I can't do that these days, so I got to do a PhD instead.
Well, you have to figure out for us how, you see some of these Zooms and people are all singing the same songs. You have to figure out how to program it so we can do that.
Yeah, we tried that with our New Westminster singing group, but we were all out of sync, so it didn't seem to work so well.
Yeah, technology can fail, and those are the ones where the promise is there, and then you go to do it, and it's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, you got a 30-second time lag, and it throws everybody out.
Right. If you have like a half a second time lag in a studio with the musicians there, it'll screw you up. So,
Robin?
Yeah, hi. Robin Erickson is my name. I am a fundraiser this week, primarily because our radio station that I work at is in our annual funding campaign. So that is top of my mind. Outside of that, I'm an arts facilitator and just trying to deal with the gray weather these days.
Yes. And today, Robin's going to be helping with our facilitating this conversation we're going to have about debunking myths of aging. And I found that there is a study by Yale University Public Health that says that believing in myths about aging, useless and negative ones, can have a negative impact on your longevity. But when you replace them, they have found as a result in a nearly 8-year increase in average lifespan. So who would like to get some years of increase? So, Robin, you mentioned something that you came across about debunking aging myths.
Yeah. Yesterday, I came across an article, and it was very timely that Charlotte was telling me that this is what we were going to be talking about today, because the title of the article is called "This Scientist Believes Aging is Optional." And a scientist whose name is David Sinclair, and he is a Harvard professor who made Time Magazine's list of 100 of the most influential people in the world in 2014, and one of the world's leading scientists in the field of aging. And he believes that aging is a disease and that it needs a cure, and that we in fact don't just age, that it is a metabolic process that we can intercept and interrupt, and that we're in charge of that we're enabled to do that if we know the right way to go about things. So anyhow, I just thought it was curious. He points to the Japanese woman whose name is Kane Tanaka, who is the oldest known living person at 116 years old. And Sinclair believes that she's just middle-aged in the grand scope of things. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I read that article too, Robin, and there were a couple of items in there that I found interesting, that he said you can reset your aging clock through fasting, through exposing yourself to cold, and through hard work.
Yeah. I wondered here in the mainland, British Columbia, where it doesn't really get that cold, how we might do that. But, you know, it's interesting. There was an old fellow that I met on Gabriola Island maybe 10 years ago, who honestly looked like he was about 55 years old, and I think he was about 87. But he swam every single day of his life across Gabriola Island to Mudge Island, which is a 20-minute rowboat ride.
Wow.
He was, and it didn't matter the weather, it just didn't matter. He swam. And, you know, if you've been in the ocean, even in the summertime, it's bloody cold.
Yeah.
Cold.
So I think that, you know, not only the exercise, but, you know, maybe that exposure to cold and cold like that really does have some wit, a bearing to it.
Well, those are hard words for me to hear. I wonder if it's retroactive, because I lived in the tropics for a number of years. So I'm afraid that it was not at all cold. Even the water wasn't cold.
Right.
And I'm not much of a swimmer, so I think I'll have to go and find one of those walk-in freezer refrigerator things they have in stores.
But I think the heat and you know, the extreme cold is just on one end of temperature, but you know, there's also something about extreme heat and the health benefits that just sweating like mad, whether that's in a sauna or, you know, steam rooms, and lots of cultures in cold places have practices where they would steam. And so I wonder in places like the tropics, Chris, if the ability for our bodies' pores to just be so open and all of that metabolic waste can sort of sweat out of us, that it doesn't create its own health benefits for some kind of longevity.
Yeah. I know that when I lived there, I in order to, because I was teaching, in order to manage, I had to have 4 showers a day. It's the only way that I could manage, right? Because it was so hot. And the country I was in was just a few degrees off the equator. So, and it was at sea level. It was an island, so it was at sea level. So it was bloody hot. And then, I know this isn't quite the topic, but then at some point I came back from the East to visit my parents just before Christmas in Prince George. And I had something like a 50-degree difference in temperature from the time I got on the plane to the time I got off the plane in Prince George. And I kept going around turning up the thermostat. My dad kept going around turning it.
Yeah, that temperature differential can also shock our system into things, right? Because I know, like, the theory behind the sauna, you read about these, I think it's the Swedes or the Finns or somebody, they plunge into the icy pool and then they go into the sauna and sweat.
Yeah. I thought it was the other way around.
Oh, whatever way, I'm not quite sure. Yeah,
because they probably do it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thought of going from hot to cold, or just being very cold, makes me, it almost scares me to death, because I was brought up in Kansas. I don't know whether it's a Kansas thought or whether it's Black people in Kansas, but we were brought up to not get in drafts. There's this whole thing about drafts, that you could die from a draft of cold air in the winter. And so when I went to Kansas State with my best friend from high school, they were doing this experiment where they put 2 Black people that had never lived with white people in a room with 2 white people that never lived with Black people. They put the 4 of us in this room. And there was a calamity, because at night, their belief is you open the window so air can circulate through. January, air circulating through a window, we believe you will die. You will get pneumonia. And so my friend was about 5'8", and she slept on the top bunk. And one night I heard her jump straight from the top, hit the floor, and she slammed the window like somebody dunking a ball. It rattled. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to break and we're going to freeze. But we had a lot of, talk about just differences in what you believe. What you believe about weather also affects, how your body responds to it.
Mm-hmm.
In the lumber camp, the Swedes and the Finlanders, they would have the sauna and then go lay in the snow.
Yeah.
They would roll in the snow, and I thought they were nuts, but maybe they'll live forever. I have a thing that I'd like to share, and that is that I am working on issues that basically go back to the Buddha's saying, and that is that all that you are arises with your thoughts. With your thoughts you make the world. And so how do I deal with the physical information that I am getting older? And everybody would say, well, you don't look a day over 75, and it's, In February, I'll be 81, assuming I get to 81, assuming I get to February. And when I had cancer 15 years ago, I declined to do the chemo, but I went to what is now called Inspire Health. And the doctor, Janice Wright, gave me a book called The Biology of Belief, which is Bruce Lipton. So I deal with this thing that says, yes, I'm getting older, but what are my beliefs about getting older? And how much do those beliefs influence my body and how my body, if I believe my brother died 2 years ago, he lived to be 90. His daughter once said to me, I don't know why he died because he was so full of life. Yeah, he was also full of martinis and everything else that you could say influence the aging of his bodies. So that's my dilemma right now. And I just sent Charlotte a copy of an item that I wrote that I wrote it for cancer patients because I was teaching cancer patients how to do the tapping, the EFT tapping. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote them a contract and asked them, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but my ex-wife and I, every year, we wrote a contract to be together for 12 months. Stay together, work on whatever issues there were. And within 14, 15 months from when we quit doing the contract, we split. Contract worked really, really well. It gave us a forum where we could talk about. So here's my latest version, my latest issue, and I don't know if we can read it or not, but this one is called My Perfect Abundance. Oh, there's Charlotte's got up the My Perfect Health. So I have something I want to do next year. I need to improve my financial situation in order to do it. And so I just wrote My Perfect Abundance contract that and I'm happy to share it with anybody once I get it finished. It's in final edit right now. But here's the thing about it is that it says, I will do whatever is necessary to support my efforts to increase my revenue. And I did this because my book went to the publisher. But the My Perfect Relationship contract worked like a hot damn until we stopped doing it. And the contract that Charlotte has with My Perfect Health contract, it basically says I'll do whatever's necessary in order to give myself support to complete this contract. So I'd be happy to share it with you. But I just wanted to say, Robin, I owe you an apology that I was supposed to say to you, what's the last time that we did a thing, I gave you a laundry list. I didn't really touch the spirituality of getting older that I had sort of promised you. Because when I look at getting older, is that I've decided what life is about losses. We're constantly losing friends, we lose our parents, we lose our childhood, we lose our innocence, we're constantly facing new issues. And I didn't have the courage to say to you, hey, getting older can sometimes be stressful.
You think?
For sure.
My apologies for not tackling. I chickened out. I gave you a laundry list about I did this, I did that, yada, yada, yada. But
I want to share something that comes to my mind about what you're saying, Neil, in terms of loss, because absolutely, I think, every day that goes by has the potential for us to lose some kind of innocence right? We gain experience and then all of a sudden we have that to kind of bank on in a way. And I did some clowning a couple of years ago. And one of the things that just is so sticky to me about clowning, and part of what I think is the hardest thing about the art form, is that it seeks to put innocence before experience. And that is the thing that creates the magic in clowning, and the vulnerability of it, and the daring of it, and the universality of it. And I think about that so often in my life, is how do we do that? Because ultimately innocence is so generative, right? Like it has so much possibility and so much opportunity to it, and experience kind of just like slams the door down, you know, and limits us from seeing those possibilities and having the wonder that we often attribute to little people, to young people, you know. And it's kind of attitudinal, which, you know, both Charlotte and Neil, you spoke of, you know, it's like, how do we believe beyond our experience?
Yeah.
You know? And it gets trickier the older we get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you notice a tendency. I mean, you know, people are getting old when their thought processes change, right? They become much more closed-minded.
Don't have to become more close-minded.
No, but, you know, this is how I've noticed with people, that the people that strike me as old. Yeah. I mean, Neil, you're a young soul. I'm sure you are. People that strike me as old are people that have closed up.
Yeah.
You know, and they're encased in these shoulds all the time. I have so many people in my circle that say, you know, you should retire. You should do this. Yes. You should slow down. You shouldn't be doing this. You're too old for this, right?
Yes.
And those are the people that are actually aging.
Yeah, the myth that I was going to bring today was the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And how that kind of, in many people's minds, that, you know, as you get older, you can't learn new things, which is totally not true. I mean, look at all of us with all of this Zooming that we're doing these days. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had to learn how to do something new that was totally outside of our past. And we all did. I mean, people who were 20 had to learn to do it, as well as people who were 80 had to learn to do it, because it wasn't something that was at least part of most people's, ordinary people's experience in life. So I think there is that, sort of goes along with what you were saying, Leslie, that when there is that closed-mindedness, then it is difficult to learn new. I mean, you can't learn new things. If you think you can't learn new things,
exactly,
then you can't. I was thinking the other day that I might go to this Babbel thing and try and learn French.
Me too.
Because I can speak English, I can speak Spanish, but I'm Canadian, and I took 5 years of French in school many, many years ago, but I can say a few words. My favorite word is parapluie.
That's a lovely word.
And in Spanish, it's paraguas, which is exactly the same. Agua is water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the whole notion that, and I agree with you. I mean, the other day I was listening to something on one of the books I'm reading, and I was hearing them talking about something about how you dress and whether you dress your age or whatever. And I thought, well, what the fuck? I don't even know what that means. What does it mean these days to dress your age? Quite honestly, I don't dress any differently now than I did when I was 30. The sizes change, but nothing else has changed, right? It's the same T-shirts and jeans and sweatshirts. And for me, it's about comfort. I don't really care what's appropriate for my age. In fact, I hate the things that are supposedly appropriate for my age.
Well, I think people that are fashion conscious when they're young and they wear like painfully tight, well, women that wear painfully tight high-heeled shoes, find that, all of a sudden they can't wear them anymore because it's so physically uncomfortable. I think that's part of dressing for age. It's dressing for comfort. I know I dress much more for comfort now than I used to.
Yeah. Well, I have to confess that I only wore high heels once in my life, and I think I was about 16. I've never worn them since.
Yeah. Well, I was very tall, but working offices, I was expected to wear, like suits and things, but I only wore like the very small, like 1-inch heels.
Oh, yeah.
Never did those stilettos. I think they were cruel punishment even back then.
Yeah, they're designed by men to make women's legs look better so that men can enjoy the legs.
Also, heels make the buttocks tip upward. It gives a different...
That's something new I learned today.
Strategy for heels. I argued with a guy who was majoring in fashion, and he wanted to make heels. And I said, well, you would make a fortune if you would make beautiful shoes, but with a 1-inch heel, because as people get older, they can't take, you already having problems from having worn stilettos or too tight or too narrow shoes. But people who really like shoes would pay a lot if you'd make these shoes with a 1-inch heel. Well, he didn't do it, but I think that's an area we can learn how to make shoes. Judith was waving. Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Oh, yes. I wanted to. Can I read a little excerpt from John Milton, Paradise Lost? It pertains to what we've been talking about.
Sure.
Okay. So this is page 12 of book 1, and it's Satan. Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled. Force has made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors, hail, infernal world, and thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. So I thought that it was really interesting that it's very much mind of the negative, that it's a mind that can't be changed by place or time. So that would be thinking of aging as not changing. That's my interpretation. Sorry. And I thought that the mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. But that's like Viktor Frankl saying, do you know his quote?
Frankl? No.
Viktor Frankl? Oh, I'm sorry. He was a therapist in a Nazi concentration camp.
Yeah.
And he echoed that thought. And thinking makes it so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how do people survive some very difficult situations? And right. I mean, there is that saying, mind over matter. And while I don't subscribe to it wholly, because there are some physiological things that, at least I haven't read these books, so I don't know how to figure this out. But certainly there is that there is that a mentality. It's like we've been saying all along, right? It's how we perceive ourselves and what we think is possible that we can do, and that we do what we think is possible, even if other people tell us that we can't. Those are the myths.
Well, others have an influence. I have to keep reminding Michelle I'm not old, which is, she's quite a bit younger than myself, and she signed up this morning to the Tokyo Marathon next March. It's going to be run virtually, but it's, I offered to carry her suitcase, and she said, we're not going. but I have to keep reminding her, hey, I can do anything that I choose to do, including, it's a couple of years since I did the grouse grind, but I think I could do it again. It may take me 3 hours or 4. It took me 3 hours last time. It may take me 3.5 hours this time. So in case we don't know what that is, that's the climb from the top of the roadway up to the top of Grouse Mountain, and it's 3,000 steps. And I got to do it next spring, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, Neil goes off on walks and ends up climbing mountains of mud and goes on hikes where they run into a rock fall. He was talking about something he and Michelle did, and he said we had a rock fall. And then I thought, rock, is that like waterfall? Does it mean that they were walking on rocks that could be spilling over somewhere?
That was at Kimberley, BC on that was actually Michelle's birthday, but we went for a 9-kilometer walk and to a lake, and by the time I was coming back, I was beginning to run out of steam, and we came to a rock fall. We had done it on the way there, but I still had lots of energy, and on the way back, I didn't have quite the reserves so I read my poem all the way along about it's only a step, just one step, because it was about, I'm guessing it was probably a 6 or 8 story building to the bottom of the rock fall, and about another 5 or 6 story. And it was that kind of degree, it's like, and they had made a pathway along the rock fall. And it was a million, I don't know how many, but they were all the size of about a loaf of bread. They were about that big. And it was scary, that's for sure. And it was about a 0.5 kilometer long from where it started to where it ended. And hey, you got to do what you got to do. And I had to go to this lake. I promised Michelle we would do the 9K hike.
Hey. I think that relates to changing your mind, because I would have looked at it and said, you're crazy, and turn around and look for another route. But yes, your mind being young enough to just say, accept the risk of going, or the belief that you were going to get to the other side. I think Joe found that quote. What was the quote that you found? You were looking up, you gave the link for it.
Yeah, it's the pursuit of happiness undermines happiness.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that the one? I'm not sure.
It's in Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning, yes.
Mansford, I read that book. I'm trying to remember his name.
Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl, yes. Read that book a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. I was looking for it and couldn't find it just now. Sorry.
I went looking for quotes, and I underlined the quote by looking for quotes. The search for quotes.
Yes, I found Viktor Frankl quotes. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. I'm looking at the short ones.
Mm-hmm.
When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Anyway.
I'd like to give you a quote. It's on the bottom of my perfect abundance contract, and that is that starting over changing one's beliefs is a bold endeavor. Indeed, there is no greater adventure. That's from Jane Roberts, and the book was Seth, The Way Towards Health. And she was, I think, a psychic or whatever. She channeled Seth, the character. And I really like this. Starting over, changing one's belief is a bold adventure, a bold endeavor. Indeed, there is no greater adventure. And Robin, that's kind of really the same theme that you're looking at, and that is just changing our beliefs.
It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's
Probably the hardest thing that we try to do, right?
That and learning to love yourself unconditionally.
Well, I think that's part of the belief system that we that we fall into as humans in these bodies. One of the things that occurred to me through some of those quotes, but also something else, I think that Judith said, maybe, anyways, is this idea of expectation, because I think sometimes myths, and especially myths around aging, they're born out of these constructed expectations that, when you hit a certain point in your life, you are ABC or XYZ, you are a grandmother, or, you are retired. Leslie, you brought that to the table, like you're this age, you should be this thing, and wrestling out, not only for personal reasons, but within the community and within our families and within the broader society, how we reckon with these expectations of hitting these sort of benchmark places that we haven't achieved what their goal is for us. Almost,
So these are, they're social constructs. They're benchmarks that society imposes on us. And, in other societies, they don't have a concept of retirement. You just live. You live and you take part in society, just basically make a contribution for as long as you can, in whatever way that you can.
Yeah, looking at these top 8 myths about aging, they indicate reasons why we have to continue to push to be on boards that make decisions about things, because the fourth one is, as you age, your ability to learn often stops. So if somebody has that in their head, they're likely not to want to hire somebody to be on a project that has a lot of research or a lot of technology. Mm-hmm. But according to the Harvard Medical School, while learning patterns may change and the speed of learning may diminish, your basic capacity to learn remains. In fact, as we age, the branching of the brain's nerve cells increase and connections between distant brain areas strengthen. So it makes it easier to detect relationships between diverse sources of information and understand the global implications. I was connected to an article that someone wrote about the differences, what is going to happen with younger people who do multitasking, or anybody that buys into that you need to be multitasking, because there are patterns in the brain or regions of the brain that are meant to consider. And so people who are constantly bypassing that region, when they reach our age, they will not be able to make those kinds of differentiations and make types of contrasts. So if you follow along with their theory, is the best thing that you could do if you do work that needs a lot of reasoning is have older people who have a lot of information and who through life have had to make decisions, weigh and think about different outcomes rather than just jumping around, at a lot of different things.
Yeah, that certainly is kind of my personal experience. And I don't know whether it's because I've always been able to do this, but I've been able to think outside the box and to be able to see possibilities or to respond spontaneously to situations. The other day, I sent a Slack message. I'm a volunteer, but this is a staff person who's a hell of a lot younger than me, and I ended up sending her a message on Slack. One more of those things I've had to learn. Just to suggest that, it is important to take into consideration the immediate what's happening rather than just going through the checklist and following one step after the other, because the checklists don't work in every situation. And so I said, there has to be, and I think this is part of what you're saying, is that we have gathered a lot of experience and we've learned how to respond and react and think more spontaneously, and also have ideas that go beyond the walls and the sides of the box that are put up for us, and that includes the whole process of aging, right? I mean, people really do want to put us into boxes. And I'm sorry, but
here we are in the Zoom in a bunch of boxes.
Like it,
We're in a box.
it's like somebody decided that there's a best before date and we've passed it.
Yes, I think you're right. I love that.
Which is the reason for us not to retire, to keep being on boards, committees, pressing to understand how laws are made, and using, now thinking about the beauty of our brains, that there are all these new pathways. My daughter said to me, I was, like you were talking about learning French, and I was saying, maybe I'd learn French. And she said, well, you don't have to worry about getting Alzheimer's, because every time you learn something new, your brain learns new pathways. So, Alzheimer's would get lost trying to find all these pathways that your mind goes in. But learning a new language, doing puzzles,
Music
are among the things listed as ways that keep levels of dementia at bay. And so thinking about how people make assumptions, when you were talking about innocence, it made me think of another area that is a myth, that seniors aren't interested in sex. A 2017 University of Michigan national poll on healthy aging showed that 65% of respondents ages 50 through 80 were interested in sex. 76% agreed that sex is an important part of a romantic relationship at any age, and 40% indicated they were still sexually active. But a lot of people, when you go to the doctor, they will answer, and actually in the negative, they'll say, well, you aren't still having sex, are you? And I thought, what a ridiculous assumption, because it takes away, I worked a lot with people with HIV prevention and things that doctors should ask people. And so some people, if a person was a teacher, if they were in a particular religion, they would say, oh, you aren't having sex. So the questions that they should have, or the offering for an HIV test or other things, they weren't done, because when you ask a person something in the negative, then it makes the person feel like, oh, well, I must be bad.
Yes,
bad.
No.
But that innocence of presumption that there are, again, some assisted living facilities and some skilled nursing facilities have got serious prohibitions against sex. They are even some where a married couple are not put in the same room. They have them in two separate rooms within the facility. And so it's an area for advocacy. I went to do a nutrition visit at a skilled facility, and there was a big commotion going on. And an older woman who they said had one level of dementia, but she was found in the bed of an older man the next morning, and it was bedlam. They were calling the family and telling them they were going to put her out, and they said, "Is the older man okay?" He's okay. She's okay. They don't even. So, but these prejudices are ideas, that somewhere there's this myth that either it's something that either you aren't interested in doing or shouldn't be doing once you reach a certain age.
I think that's part of, there's a tendency to want to treat old people as if they're children. And I think that's part and parcel of that.
I like the saying that says, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm, what is it? I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once. I can't remember the saying now. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once as I ever was.
Hey, all, I have to leave now. I've got another call, and my mom needs to have her tea. So I wish you all a day.
All right. Well, I hope you got some fertile thoughts for your thesis work.
I actually did. I was just about to say that, and it gave me an idea for bringing something to class next week. This class being the Powered by Age class here. So, the Frankel stuff got me thinking about it. So stay tuned, and I'll be back.
Okay. Take care. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you, Joel.
Bye, Joel.
Bye, Joel.
On that note, I want to say that I do have to leave a couple minutes before 2 because I have to go on another Zoom. People in Winnipeg.
Somebody, who was it that had that song that had Zoom? Was it the Commodores? There's a song that I just hear them saying Zoom.
You know what it was? It was the Mazda car advertising. And there was a lot of complaints about it because they had this little kid who was probably maybe 10 or 11 saying zoom, 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 zoom. And it was all connected to the car and driving fast.
Wow.
So that's what I remember in terms of.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of our lives, but what did anyone else have any comments around that thought of seniors aren't interested in sex, or that there aren't forums? It's almost like it's not polite conversation for older people.
I think it depends what group of older people you're talking about.
I was going to say it's not unlike the conversation around death, right? I mean, those are two topics that you just don't talk about with people of our age. Really, they're taboo.
I have a friend in Montreal who she runs a group called Talk About Death. She's a therapist of some sort, and I can't remember the name of her group though, but they talk about death. It is, they want to deal with the subject.
Yeah, there has been a movement, and I don't quite remember either, but not necessarily just for older adults, but for anybody of any age, to bring the whole topic of death out of the closet and put it on the table, which is very similar to talking about the issue of sex and any of those topics that people consider to be taboo. Because I'm not sure that talking about sex is taboo in our culture. Many things are taboo to talk about around sex. I mean, the whole issue of these days of sex education in schools, particularly around same-sex relationships or being gay or being lesbian, and the whole issue of gender. I mean, it's like, no, we can't talk about these things. And it's sort of, I don't know, I was just thinking about the United States and even here in Vancouver recently, the maskers and the anti-maskers, right? I mean, there's those those divisions that those divisions that are absolutely dreadful, and finding a bridge, how to find a bridge. So, I mean, I think even these podcasts that we're doing, hopefully it's not only older adults that are listening, but people who are not yet older adults. And as they say, they're practicing to be, or they're something along those lines. Because I think that there's so many myths about aging, and there's so many things that it would be good for people who are younger, like in their 40s and 50s, when I say younger, to actually be able to explore and talk about as well.
Yeah, you're right, because there's a group called the Sandwich Generation, and that's people that are in their 30s and 40s, and they've got children and they've got older people that they make decisions for.
Yeah.
And so the times where people, something is ventured into sharing things, I find they're very interested, but just out and on itself, there really aren't a lot of conversations that help people in that group debunk some of the myths that they have, because they will tend to make decisions for their parent in the same way that they'd make decisions for their 8-year-old.
Yes.
And so, again, it's where we have to get out, lace up our shoes. I would say, we have to lace up our shoes and get back out into the basketball game of life and talk about these things, instigate conversations and stimulate conversations, because it's important.
I remember making a comment to Robin in the previous conversation about keeping young and keeping balance and so forth, because I laugh every time I put my underwear on, and I'm doing it standing up. I don't get dressed to keep my balance. I put my pants on standing up, and as well as my underwear. That was a good suggestion, Robin, that you brought to me, because once you ask the question about how do you keep your balance as you get older, well, I put my pants on standing up.
I have that same concern.
And do you do it on the balcony?
Actually, we got information from China through Michelle that when you come in from being out in the world, the best thing you can do is put your clothes out on the balcony. And so I've taken my pants off out on the balcony, and I've put my pants on out on the balcony. But if you look out what's out there, the next possible place that can see into the 19th floor where I live is several miles away. So I'm not the least bit concerned about offending the neighbors.
So I'm going to bow out and say, this was a great discussion. One of the things that I think I sent in an email to Charlotte is these podcasts for me provide me with a space to have conversations about topics and issues that are deeper than how's the weather and what movie did you watch, because it's something that I really have missed in my life. So thanks Charlotte, for organizing this and hanging in there with us and helping us to have these kind of deeper conversations and discussions. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you all next week.
Bye,
Robin
Chris.
is going to be taking you to a deeper place next week. So tune in and call a friend.
I'll do my best.
I'm also excited to know what it is that you would like to have deeper conversations about, so that I can facilitate an exercise that we can really get juicy about. And so if you give that a little bit of thought and maybe want to share that with Charlotte, then she can share it with me, or feel free to call me if you've got my number. And I can incorporate that because I want us to be talking about things that you want to talk about.
Okay, well, I'm happy that we all got a chance to talk today, and we'll be able to do it again on another day. So all of the people, I feel, and I can't sing, but these things make me remember, songs from Mr. Rogers, who are the people in your neighborhood, and saying, won't you be my neighbor? So take care.
Thanks, Charlotte.
You're welcome. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Everybody.
We'll see you again next week.
For sure.